Hey guys, welcome back to our latest frequently asked question. And today, Alan from New Jersey asks, have you noticed when using up day, down day type of dieting that the metabolism speeds up at a certain point and requiring more food to be added? Well, this is a kind of a complex answer, and I'm going to try to keep it as simple as possible, not get off task or answer it in too many ways. I'm going to stick to exactly what the question is asking. And essentially, for those of you that don't know, up day, down day, alternate day eating is rather than doing a particular diet where your calories are the same all the time, you alternate days. So the end result calories are about the same, but you have one day where you're eating more food, one day where you eat less. The variance in those two really depend on the person and the goals. But let's first cover the topic about metabolism, because this is a very widely talked about, very misused term that I want to address. Metabolism, basically what we're looking at, what metabolism basically is the term I use is resting metabolic rate. And metabolism means that it's the amount of calories that your body burns at rest without doing a thing. Basically, what your body needs to survive, what your body needs to do bodily normal functions throughout the day. So a lot of people think, well, I'm sitting, I'm not burning calories, I'm sleeping, I'm not burning calories. It's not true. There's a lot of, the majority of your caloric output on a daily basis has to do with what is required among your body to burn additional calories. A number of different factors that go into, if you were just sitting there doing nothing, how many calories does it take for your body to sustain that? And so, what you look at is, okay, if you did nothing, is there food in your system to be able to cover that? Is there storage in some place for your body to use that? Stored carbohydrates and so forth. And if not, where am I going to pull from? Am I going to pull from muscle? Am I going to pull from stored fat? What is going to happen in those situations? Then what you do on top of that is you add activity to that. The activity, so you have your resting metabolic rate. You then add activity to that, and that causes your body to burn more calories. So, and then additionally to that, there's a lot of research and a lot of talk out there right now, which there is a lot of truth to that, is eating at certain times in the day, eating certain foods increases metabolism. Well, kind of. People put way too much focus into, well, I eat this food, it sped up my metabolism, or I ate at this time of the day, I sped up my metabolism. Yes, your body in the beginning of the day, first thing in the morning, will be at more of its peak, will be more functional, and towards the end of the day it starts shutting or slowing down. But each person has their own internal time clock. It's different for each person. It's not going to be 8 o'clock for this person or 8 o'clock for the other person. And also, too, for instance, is if your body is consuming, let's say, cold water, your body has to heat it up in order to bring it back to body temperature. And so, yes, your body will burn extra calories in order for that process to happen, but you're not talking significant amounts. You're also, if you eat foods that require greater digestibility, high fibrous foods, the foods that contain proteins and fats and other things like that require more time digesting, your metabolism will speed up. It will require more calories, more work to do that process. If you're doing very, very simple foods, doesn't require as much work. So high fiber, very nutrient dense foods are important because it causes your metabolism to speed up a little bit. But we're not talking grand amounts. So if we're talking about what causes your metabolism to speed up, how many calories you burn throughout the day, there's two major factors. And there's other minor factors. We're talking major factors. Number one, it's your resting metabolic rate, which we'll come back to in a little bit. That is your baseline of the number of calories that it takes for your body to sustain bodily functions and so forth. And then secondly, you add the activity, your particular activity, how many calories your body outputs to do certain activities, and that's your caloric output throughout the day. And then what you have is your body will either use food that is taken in, stored carbohydrates, glycogen that's stored in your system to be used and pulled out for activity, or it's going to pull from stored fat or stored muscle. And we're not going to get into that. We're just going to talk about metabolism. So what indicates a person's resting metabolic rate? The resting metabolic rate is indicated by the amount of lean muscle tissue that a body carries on its body. It takes significantly more work for your body to maintain lean muscle tissue than it does fat. So if you add fat to your body, there's not a lot of significant amount of work that goes into maintaining fat. However, if your body has a greater percentage of lean muscle tissue, it requires more work for your body to maintain that muscle. So the key to adding to your basic metabolic rate is to increase your lean muscle tissue, because that will increase your body at rest. It'll increase the caloric need at rest. And a perfect example of that, I'll use myself as an example in both scenarios, in two different scenarios. Scenario number one is when I was a competitive bodybuilder. I weighed about 240 pounds lean. My contest weight, what we call shredded weight on stage, was about 215 to 220. Because I would test everything, I could test the fact that I could get lean. I could lose body fat on 5,000 calories a day, doing about 3 to 4 days a week of weight training and minimal to no cardio. And the reason being is because the significant amount of lean muscle tissue that my body had, it required all this caloric value, all these caloric calories that were needed in order to sustain that muscle. And if I didn't take in X amount of calories, then my body would start stripping muscle because it needed something. And therefore, as I started losing muscle, when I'm at the weight that I'm at right now, about 175 to 180 pounds, stay very, very lean, but my caloric needs to maintain my weight are about 2,500 to 3,000 calories, because the only difference is I don't have as much muscle on my body. And that's the only difference. I hope that makes sense to you. And then also, let's say if I got into competitive events, running, marathons, biking, competitive sports, whatever it may be, there obviously is a need for more calories because the activity level is higher, but we're talking about basic metabolic rates. So to answer your question, what we want to look at, Adam, is, I know this is a little bit long-winded, the only way that there is a greater need on the up-day, down-day diet for more calories is if you're adding more muscle. It's something that we, as your coach, will look at and we'll say, okay, where is your lean muscle tissue? We'll look at caloric levels and also what your need is based on your activity, but most of it is we're looking at that resting metabolic rate. The scenario number two, real quickly, that I want to talk about is as you're losing muscle. If you're dieting hardcore and your caloric levels are too restricted, you will lose muscle because your body will start having this caloric need and will start pulling from muscle, and that drops your resting metabolic rate, which we don't want. So we want to keep a very close eye on what your lean muscle tissue is. Try to feed you with more food, and if your body can still get leaner because it's adding lean muscle, because the caloric need increases, then we can keep adding food perhaps to that up day, keep dropping or maintaining that down day. And what happens is that extra fuel will lead to more muscle. It will increase your resting metabolic rate, which is going to result in a leaner, more defined, more muscular person. I hope that kind of makes sense to you. But with the up day, down day, it's important to have a coach. It's important to have your head wrapped around it. It is our preferred way of dieting for most people. Traditional dieting, where you eat the same amount of calories every day, is fine. But the reason why we're a proponent, well, not a reason, but there are other diets out there, such as like the HCG diet, the Atkins diet. Even though I'm not a believer in those plans, it is very important to have a coach even when you're following those, because if they structure it appropriately based on your caloric needs, more for the Atkins diet, let's say, for instance, or other low carbohydrate diets, you won't lose a lot of muscle, and therefore you're going to be able to maintain a good resting metabolic rate. The up day, down day is no different. If you have a coach, we're going to look at that. We're going to look at your caloric levels, your caloric needs, maybe add more food into it to try to increase your lean muscle tissue and keep dropping your body fat. But if you just followed it on your own, didn't have an idea of what your caloric levels could be, you could be eating too few of calories, which is going to result in more muscle being lost, which is going to result in you not being able to burn as many calories, you having more of a difficulty of getting leaner, and it could spin into all these other things that, I mean, I'm sure you can put two and two together. So I hope that answers your question today. I hope that you know, puts a nice spin on what you were asking. I appreciate you guys joining us for our latest question and answer.
When you feel that something's wrong.